Somebody just paid $110,000 for a used t-shirt. Not a rare vintage jersey. Not a piece of game-worn history from a legendary athlete. A t-shirt that was worn for less than 15 minutes on a stage during a halftime show. And here's the part that's going to mess with your head. That same t-shirt sold for the exact same price as the official match ball from the World Cup Final itself. The actual ball. The one both teams fought over for 90 minutes in front of tens of millions of people. Same price. Down to the dollar. If you think that sounds impossible, stay with me, because by the end of this video you're going to understand exactly how this happened, who was behind it, and why this one shirt ended up being the single most talked about item in an auction that also included Lionel Messi memorabilia, Madonna stage gear, and Justin Bieber sneakers. And yes, all three of them lost. Let's rewind to July 19th, 2026. MetLife Stadium in New Jersey is packed. Spain and Argentina are about to play the biggest match in world football, the final of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. But before a single ball is kicked in the second half, something happens that had never happened in the history of this tournament. FIFA stages its first ever halftime show at a World Cup final. Not a marching band, not a local performer. FIFA brings out one of the biggest music acts on the planet to perform in front of a global audience that, at that moment, is watching in the hundreds of millions across every continent. That group is BTS. And for a few minutes, in the middle of the most watched football match on Earth, the stadium turns into a concert. If you're not familiar with BTS, here's the fast version. They are one of the highest-grossing touring acts in the world right now. They've broken chart records across multiple countries, and their fanbase is famous for being loud, organized, and fiercely loyal. So when FIFA put them on that halftime stage, it wasn't just a music moment. It was a collision of two of the biggest fandoms on the planet, football and K-pop, happening on the same field, at the same time, in front of the same cameras. The group performed their global hit, Dynamite, and for those few minutes, 7 guys in custom-made stage outfits became part of World Cup history forever. Think about the sheer scale of what was actually happening in that stadium. This wasn't a small halftime slot buried between commercial breaks. This was the final, the single most watched football match on the planet that year, with a broadcast audience stretching across nearly every time zone, every continent, every major language on Earth. FIFA didn't just take a risk by putting a music act on that stage. They made a statement about where global entertainment is heading, blending the world's biggest sport with one of the world's biggest musical forces, live, in front of the biggest possible audience. And whatever you think about that decision, one thing became undeniable within days. It created a moment nobody could stop talking about, and that moment was about to get a price tag nobody saw coming. Now here's where it gets interesting, because clothes that get worn on a stage like that don't just disappear into a closet afterward. They become artifacts. And a little over a week after the World Cup ended, one of the most prestigious auction houses on the planet decided to prove exactly how much that moment was worth. Christie's. Yes, the Christie's, the auction house that sells actual Picasso paintings and pieces of space history, launched an online charity auction called One Goal, a FIFA Global Citizen Education Fund auction. The idea was simple on paper. Take memorabilia from the World Cup Final, jerseys, boots, the match ball, autographed items from legends, and let the public bid on them, with every single dollar going to a charitable fund. 26 items in total. 1 week of bidding. Collectors from 24 different countries logging in to fight over pieces of World Cup history. And when you look at the lineup of what was actually up for auction, it reads like a highlight reel of 2026. There's a jersey signed by Lionel Messi, gifted to his wife Shakira, from Argentina's run to the final. There's a pair of goalkeeper gloves worn and signed by Madonna, who performed at the tournament's opening ceremony. There's a pair of sneakers worn by Justin Bieber during his acoustic performance. And of course, there's the crown jewel that everyone assumed would win the whole thing, the actual official match ball used in the final itself, the Adidas Tri-Onda, stamped with the World Cup Final branding, one of the rarest single objects a football fan could ever own. If you were designing this auction on paper, you bet everything on that ball being the top seller. It's the ball. It touched both goals. It's literally the object the entire sport revolves around. Nobody expected a stage costume to even come close. And honestly, that's a completely reasonable assumption. Match-worn football memorabilia has produced some of the biggest numbers in sports collecting history. Just a few years earlier, a set of shirts worn by Messi during a previous World Cup run sold for millions of dollars at a different auction house, setting records for anything connected to his name. So when Christie's put together this catalog, the logic was straightforward. The ball wins, the biggest football names come in second, and everything else, including a stage outfit from a music performance, sits somewhere further down the list. That was the expectation walking into auction week. It is not even remotely what actually happened. But here's what nobody saw coming. Among the items up for auction were also 7 pieces of stage-worn clothing, one from each member of BTS, donated straight from the World Cup Final halftime performance. RM's boots, Jin's belt, Suga's pants, J-Hope's gloves, V's scarf, Jungkook's jacket, and one shirt worn by the member named Jimin. At first glance, Jimin's shirt didn't look like it was going to be the star of the show. Christie's own specialists, the people whose entire job is predicting exactly how much rare items are worth, put the estimate for this shirt between $3,000 and $5,000. That's it. A respectable number for a piece of celebrity-worn clothing, sure, but nowhere near headline territory. Nobody at Christie's was writing press releases expecting this shirt to break records. Now stick with me here, because I want you to actually picture this shirt for a second, because the design matters to the story. It's not just a plain white tee. It's a custom-made, white and red long-sleeve stage top designed specifically for that performance by a studio called Agro Studio. It has the letters BTS stitched across the chest, 3 stars above it, and this is a detail that fans immediately locked onto, the number 7 on the front. Football fans watching closely recognize that number instantly, because it's widely understood as a tribute to South Korean football legend Son Heung-min, one of the most beloved athletes in the country's history. So this wasn't just a random stage outfit. It was a custom piece, made for one specific moment, loaded with symbolism that connected K-pop and football fandom in a single garment. And out of all 7 BTS members performing that day, Jimin was reportedly the only one who got a fully custom-designed piece from Agro Studio. Not a modified team jersey, not a repurposed outfit, a one-of-one. And here's a small detail that actually shows you how big this moment already was before the auction even started. In the days right after the halftime show, counterfeit versions of Jimin's shirts started popping up for sale across random online shopping platforms. Knockoff copies of a stage outfit that hadn't even been formally auctioned yet. It got bad enough that the co-director of Agro Studio, the actual designer behind the piece, had to publicly call out the fakes on social media and warn fans not to get scammed. Think about that for a second. This shirt was being counterfeited before Christie's had even opened the bidding on the real one. That's not something that happens to a random costume nobody cares about. That's what happens when an item is already trending globally within hours of being worn. So the auction goes live. 26 items. A ball. A Messi jersey. Madonna's gloves. Bieber sneakers. 7 pieces of BTS stage wear. And almost immediately, something starts happening that nobody predicted. Within the first 24 hours, Jimin's shirt, remember, the one estimated at $3,000 to $5,000, already has a bid of $15,000. That's triple the highest estimate in less than a day. And it's not from one aggressive bidder either. Reports at the time noted the shirt had already pulled in dozens of individual bids, making it, by a wide margin, the most bid item in the entire auction. At that point in the bidding, it had already technically passed Messi's signed jersey in value. People online were reacting in real time, watching this number climb, watching a stage costume from a boy band go head-to-head with the biggest name in football history and win. If you're a football purist watching this happen, your first instinct is probably disbelief. How does a shirt from a music performance outbid a jersey signed by one of the greatest players who has ever lived? But if you understand how modern fandoms actually operate, how coordinated, how global, how financially committed groups like the BTS fanbase are, this stops being surprising and starts making a lot more sense. This is a fanbase that has, 4 years, mobilized to break streaming records, chart records, and ticket sales records across almost every market on Earth. An online auction with a live bidding counter was never going to be any different. So the week goes on. The number keeps climbing. And when the auction finally closes, here's what the final tally looked like. Jimin's shirt didn't just beat its estimate. It didn't just triple it, or even quadruple it. It sold for $110,000. That's more than 22 times higher than Christie's original top estimate of $5,000. Let that sink in for a second. The professional appraisers who do this for a living were off by a factor of 22. And now here's the twist that made headlines around the world. That same official match ball, the Adidas Trianda used in the actual World Cup Final, the item everyone assumed would dominate the entire auction, also sold for exactly $110,000. Not close. Not roughly similar. The exact same number. A stage-worn t-shirt from a music performance tied, dollar for dollar, with the literal ball from the World Cup Final. Two completely different worlds of fame, landing on the exact same price tag, on the exact same day, at the exact same auction house. For comparison, let's put some of the other big names in perspective, because this is where the gap really becomes obvious. Messi's signed jersey, the one gifted to Shakira, sold for $66,000. Madonna's signed goalkeeper gloves sold for $41,800. Justin Bieber's sneakers went for $26,400. All respectable numbers for celebrity memorabilia, all completely dwarfed by a t-shirt that Christie's originally valued at less than the price of a used car. And Jimin's shirt wasn't even the only BTS item pulling serious weight in this auction. When you add up everything worn by all 7 members during that halftime performance, the boots, the belt, the pants, the gloves, the scarf, the jacket, and the shirt, the combined total came out to $300,300. To put that in context, the entire auction raised $652,630 total. That means BTS memorabilia alone accounted for roughly 46% of everything raised in the entire event. Almost half of the money generated by a 26-item charity auction featuring some of the biggest names in football and pop culture came from 7 pieces of stage clothing worn for a few minutes during one performance. Look at the individual numbers behind those other 6 members for a second, because they help put Jimin's price into perspective too. V's scarf sold for $46,200. Jungkook's jacket also landed at $46,200. Suga's pants brought in $33,000. Every single one of those numbers on their own would have been considered a massive result for stage-worn clothing in almost any other auction. But next to Jimin's $110,000, they suddenly look almost modest by comparison, and that gap is exactly what turned this from BTS memorabilia did well into one specific shirt became a global story on its own. Now, why does this actually matter beyond just being a wild number to talk about? Because every single dollar from this auction wasn't going into some private collector's pocket for resale, it was funding something real. The proceeds are going toward the FIFA Global Citizen Education Fund, a program working toward raising $100 million to expand access to quality education and football opportunities for children in underserved communities around the world. So when bidders were fighting over Jimin's shirt, driving the price up by 22 times its estimate, they weren't just buying a collectible. Whether they fully realized it or not, they were funding real programs for kids who need access to education and sport. Christie's president for the Americas region even spoke about how unusual it was to see the memorabilia market react this strongly to items that had literally just been worn on stage days earlier, calling attention to just how rare it is for fans to get the chance to bid on something used that recently. Stop and actually sit with that framing for a second, because it flips the entire story on its head. This wasn't reckless spending for the sake of owning a trophy. Every single bid, all the way up from $15,000 to that final number of $110,000, was simultaneously an act of fandom and an act of charity happening at the same time. The person who placed the winning bid didn't just walk away with a shirt. They walked away knowing their money is going to help fund actual football pitches, actual classrooms, actual opportunities for kids who would otherwise never get access to either. When you frame it that way, the 22 times markup overestimates stops sounding like fan hysteria and starts sounding a lot more like one of the most effective charity fundraising strategies anyone has pulled off using a piece of clothing. So let's step back and actually unpack why this happened, because the why here is honestly more interesting than the price tag itself. First, timing. This wasn't some 50-year-old piece of memorabilia dug out of a vault. This shirt was worn on July 19th. The auction closed roughly a week and a half later. Fans weren't bidding on nostalgia, they were bidding on something that felt fresh, immediate, almost like owning a piece of a moment that was still trending online. That freshness creates urgency, and urgency drives bidding wars. Second, exclusivity. Out of 7 BTS members performing that day, Jimin was the one member who reportedly received a fully custom, one-of-one design from Agro Studio rather than a standard or shared design. When something is understood to be genuinely unique, not mass-produced, not replicated, it changes how collectors value it. You're not just buying a shirt a celebrity wore. You're buying the only one of its kind that will ever exist. Third, and honestly the biggest factor, fandom mobilization. BTS has one of the most organized, most globally distributed fan communities in modern pop culture. This is a fan base that treats moments like this as a call to action. When something like a charity auction featuring their favorite artist goes live, it's not treated as a passive spectator event. It becomes something the community actively participates in and pushes toward records, the same way they've pushed songs to #1 or ticket sales to sell out in minutes. A live bidding counter, ticking upward in real time, watched by fans across 24 countries, is basically tailor-made for that kind of coordinated momentum. And fourth, the symbolism. That number 7 on the shirt, tied to a beloved football legend, created a genuine crossover moment. This wasn't purely a K-pop story or purely a football story. It sat right in the middle of both worlds, which meant it pulled attention and bidding interest from 2 completely different audiences at the same time, something almost nothing else in that auction could claim. Put all 4 of those factors together: fresh timing, genuine exclusivity, an incredibly mobilized fan base, and crossover symbolism connecting 2 massive fandoms, and a 22 times markup over the original estimate suddenly stops looking like a fluke and starts looking almost inevitable in hindsight. There's actually a 5th factor worth mentioning too, and it's one that traditional auction houses are still catching up to: the sheer size of the online audience watching this in real time. This wasn't a quiet room with paddles being raised. It was a live, public bidding counter, visible to anyone with an internet connection, in 24 different countries simultaneously. Every time that number ticked upward, it got screenshotted, posted, and shared across social media within minutes. That visibility turned the auction itself into a kind of live event, something fans could watch unfold in real time, root for, and actively push toward a bigger number the exact same way they'd stream a music video on release day to push it up the charts. A closed-room, invite-only auction could never have generated this kind of momentum. A fully public, globally visible one was practically built for it. What's wild is that this entire story almost sounds made up if you just heard the headline out of context. A pop star's t-shirt sold for the same price as a World Cup Final match ball. If someone told you that a year ago, you'd assume it was exaggerated internet clickbait. But this is fully documented, fully verified, reported by major outlets covering both the sports and entertainment sides of a story, straight from Christie's own auction results. The estimate was $3,000 to $5,000. The final price was $110,000. It tied the actual World Cup final ball. It's all right there in the official auction record. So here's the real question worth sitting with. What does it actually say about where we are right now, culturally, when a piece of stage clothing worn for a few minutes can generate the same monetary value as literal World Cup history? Some people are going to look at this and see it as proof of how absurd celebrity culture and fan spending have become. Others are going to look at it and see something genuinely beautiful, a global community coming together, competing not out of ego but to fund education for kids who need it, turning a fashion moment into real charitable impact. Honestly, both of those reactions can be true at the same time. That tension is exactly why this story spread the way it did. If there's one thing this whole moment proves, it's that fame in 2026 doesn't respect the old boundaries anymore. Football and pop music, sports memorabilia and stage fashion. Messi and Jimin, sitting in the exact same auction catalog, competing for the exact same pool of bidders. A few years ago, that combination wouldn't have made sense to almost anyone. Now it's not just plausible, it's the story that broke headlines and left even a world-class auction house stunned by how badly they underestimated the room. And it raises a bigger question that goes way beyond this one auction. What actually gives an object its value anymore? For decades, the answer in sports collecting was simple: rarity, history, and connection to legendary performance. A ball from a final, a jersey from a legend's greatest game. Those were the untouchable benchmarks. But this auction just showed the world that a brand new category of value now sits right alongside that old model, cultural velocity. How fast something trends. How mobilized the community around it is. How emotionally invested millions of people are in the exact moment that object represents. Christie's has sold Picasso paintings and pieces of space exploration history in this same building. And in this particular week, none of that experience prepared them for what a coordinated, globally distributed fanbase was capable of doing to a starting estimate in real time. That's really the story underneath the story here. It's not just a shirt sold for a lot of money. It's proof that the old rulebook for valuing memorabilia is being rewritten right now, in real time, by fandoms that treat moments like this the same way they treat a chart record or a ticket sale, as something worth mobilizing for, together on a global scale. So now I want to hear from you. Before you scroll away, drop a comment and tell me, were you shocked by that estimate being off by 22 times? Or does this level of fan-driven bidding actually make total sense to you once you think about who was in the room? And if this is the first time you're hearing this story, hit that subscribe button, because this channel breaks down exactly these kinds of viral crossover moments, where music, sports, and fandom collide in ways nobody sees coming, before almost anyone else covers them. Give this video a like if you made it this far. It genuinely helps the story reach more people who have absolutely no idea this even happened. And if you want to see more deep dives like this one, breaking down the numbers and the stories behind the biggest fan-powered moments in pop culture right now, there's a video right on your screen you should watch next. I'll see you there.